So you can either deploy it all into Bitcoin or you can average it into Bitcoin. That's the two things that I would do there. Not financial advice, of course. Now, with a public company, it's different because you almost want a higher and a stronger and a more topical Bitcoin price because it makes the availability of capital easier. So that's kind of the opposite that everyone thinks. Like a lot of people think, well, wouldn't it be great if Bitcoin crashed because then you could buy more of it? Well, yeah, you could buy more of it, but probably with less capital. So not really more of it. And I personally believe that Bitcoin's going up forever. And yes, it's going to have the odd dip, but I don't want to see a massive long period of brutal price action because you'll scare a lot of people away from the sector, like obviously markets, that's the way they work. You'll get good times and bad times and things, but yeah, no, it's the opposite of what you would think. But a slowly increasing Bitcoin price is probably the ideal result. After that, Bitcoin ripping up significantly, that's probably the next ideal result. And Bitcoin staying flat probably after that, Bitcoin going down after that. So yeah, it's the opposite to what you would think it is.
Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Andrew Webley. Andrew is the CEO of the SmarterWeb company, a London-listed technology firm that's making web in the UK, largest publicly traded company holding Bitcoin on its balance sheet. Andrew brings a wealth of experience in digital strategy and financial innovation, a passionate Bitcoin investor posting in his personal capacity on X, where he boasts over 8,000 followers. Andrew is at the forefront of blending web development prowess with bold treasury strategies. Today, we will talk about the latest news on his company and the insights he got from the latest conference he attended, together with future plans of the SmarterWeb company. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Nice to have you again in our streaming. We have streaming, then on the city, now new streaming, and let's see if we can do another walking around the city soon, but not here in Hong Kong. Let's see what happens.
We'll have to try and get that organized, but I'm optimistic that we will.
Let's go. So, Andrew, it's been a couple of months, like not less than 2 months since we talked last time here in Hong Kong. I want to ask how many Bitcoins now the company is holding. Last time we met was 2,440. Now, how much Bitcoin do you have?
Yeah, so we put an announcement out 3 hours ago in the UK. We hold 2,550. So the announcement that we put out this morning was only a small buy, 25 Bitcoin. Yesterday morning, we announced the update to our ATM style facility, which is where the money came from for the 25 Bitcoin. And we also announced the placing yesterday morning, which will settle on Thursday. And so that will be a larger amount of Bitcoin that we'll be adding soon. So yeah, we've been adding what we can when we can. It's quite cool that we're over 2,500 Bitcoin now. Think that makes us 29th in the world in terms of Bitcoin held. We're still the biggest in the UK. We're still bigger than everyone else in the UK added together. And we're determined to expand that lead.
Yeah, many competitors have come in the last weeks. There was a Brazilian company that just went out of the blue with more than 3,000 Bitcoin and a lot of support from Adam Back, another investor. And how things have been going since we met last time until today. You attended to conferences, you've been meeting new investors, you appointed a new CFO. Tell us about these developments.
Yeah, so we've been really busy. So in terms of the staff, we appointed the new CFO, Albert. He's been great so far. In terms of helping us with the various different projects that we're doing. That's been really good. Last week we announced a new non-executive director, Randall. He's joined our board and he was present on the board meeting that we had yesterday. And he's going to be a tremendous asset to the company as well. Really well experienced, very good on audit, corporate governance, all these sorts of things. So yeah, that's really important. That's something that people, they see when we announce it, but I don't think everyone realizes the importance of all of these different individuals in terms of everything that we actually have to do. So that makes things much better. And the announcement that we put out yesterday morning, I think, is really important as well, because one of the things that we've been saying for the last couple of months is how hard we've been working on attracting the institutional capital. And now people can start to see that some of these investors are starting to commit, relatively modest at the moment. It was £8 million committed by this one investor, to the strategy and to the business. So that's good to see as well. And like I've said to everyone at all times, these things take time. I think maybe we could get on to sort of the different types of capital that you can use and the different ways that you can structure that. Because I think there's a little bit of sort of confusion around that with various different investors, or people see things in different ways. But we're convinced that, as we're structuring these things, it's the right way of doing it for the benefit of everyone and the company. So yeah, we're quite pleased with how it's all going. Obviously, since we met, in Hong Kong for the Bitcoin Asia conference, which was great. It has been a tough time in the markets. It's been harder to raise capital. NAVs have been compressed. I personally believe that we're getting to the end of that now, and things are going to look a lot better. From now, I think you can already see in the Bitcoin price, October kicking in. Bitcoin's probably 10% higher than it was a week ago, something like that at the moment. And I think it looks incredibly strong, and I'm very much looking forward to the next couple of months. But in Bitcoin Treasury land, it's been quite hard for most people. But what we've shown people is, even when things are hard, we've still been generating Bitcoin yield. We've still been adding Bitcoin. We've still been raising capital. We've still been coming up with new products, some of which we probably haven't sort of publicly announced yet. So we've certainly not been standing still in terms of the company itself. So we've been building out the team. We've been pushing this very, very important project forward that we've got for the near future. So I think that's probably, what you need to watch if you're an investor in the space, is if you look at companies when things are tough and the market's harder. I think that's when you want to see companies doing stuff, because anyone can do stuff when capital's flowing freely and people's risk level is sky high. But when markets are contracting a bit and you've got to work a lot harder for the money, I think that's when you separate out the good companies from the bad companies.
Yes, because since I remember, since the peak of the treasury companies, that was around July, something like that. I remember when I interviewed you for first time, all the companies were super high. Then it went down, and we saw this in the Nakamoto share that dropped from $16. Now today is $1 with MNAV minor to 1. How and I have a question for that. That is like, what is your message for the investors in navigating these rough times that are happening with the stocks going down, MNAV compression, and all the things that probably bring some FUD to the, because now the critics come when things go down. Many people say, "Oh, I told you this was a scam. This cost is not sustainable." How do you react to all these things in this moment?
Yeah, so I think it's important, and this is what we've been working really hard at for these last couple of months, is to try and explain what the model is. How does this work? What should investors be looking for? What should they be aware of in terms of risks? And there are a number of things that you need to look at, but one of the most, if not the most important thing, is Bitcoin yield. So you and I can go out and we can buy some Bitcoin today, and we can hold that however we want to hold it forever. Yeah. Nice
Mm-hmm.
and simple. So a Bitcoin treasury company can buy Bitcoin, and then it can use capital markets to increase the capital that it's got available to it and effectively offer compound Bitcoin. So I think what everyone needs to do is they need to say, well, why am I investing in this company? What's the point of it? So, if you can invest in a company that is well run, that is delivering a positive Bitcoin yield every single quarter forever, then to me, that's a lot more attractive than just holding Bitcoin, because you're getting compound Bitcoin, like even if the Bitcoin yield, um, let's say a company delivers 20% Bitcoin yield a year. Yeah. You know, that is better than holding Bitcoin, in my opinion. And so I think investors need to sort of think to themselves, well, you know, what's my time scale? What am I trying to achieve? Do I understand what I'm investing in? I've got zero doubt in our company that, we've got the model right, and we're delivering value. We're doing it as best we can in a very, very competitive market at the moment. We've avoided a lot of the things that some of the companies have participated in, which, let's be honest, have contributed to the problems in the market. The sort of the pipe deals. We had one of those in the UK, absolutely shocking. Not we had one of those in the UK. The UK had one of these. And there's been multiple ones in the US, and they were always going to end like they've ended. But hopefully lessons will be learnt, and people will be more responsible in terms of the capital strategies in the future, because it's our job running these companies to obviously deliver the return for our shareholders, but also to do the right thing in the wider context, so that the regulators, the investors, etc., are still keen on the space forever. So yeah, it's been a very interesting 2 months, and I think that we've done okay in quite a tough time, actually. But I'm very much looking forward to the next few months. I think it's going to get a lot better, a lot a lot better, and it will be pretty quick as well.
Yes, because I think that the first problem is that not many people understand how the treasury companies work. Probably people from the financial markets background see the companies growing very fast, they put money, and then they don't understand, and they measure the returns on fiat. Oh, it's dropping. But on the same time, they don't see that the Bitcoin per share is getting higher. And another problem is that as the treasury companies, the price of the stock, not the Bitcoin yield, gets better when the Bitcoin is volatile. And nowadays, in the last months, Bitcoin became boring. It was not volatile. So I'm talking about the competition, because you talk about that, the competitive market. More and more and more and more companies are coming to the market, no, to fight for capital and to buy more Bitcoin. We said, and we spoke in our last episode in Hong Kong, that of course you were like collaborating, because a company that buys Bitcoin makes the price going up and the price of the company goes up. But on the other side, there is a competition for the capital, for the investor. What is SWC doing to attract more investors in these times of more competition again among Bitcoin treasury companies?
Yeah. So what we do is, well, first and foremost, I believe that any company that wants to add Bitcoin to its balance sheet is a very positive thing. And that's what I want to see, public or private company. Um, what I don't want to see is, I don't want to see public companies pretending to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet, or not doing it in the way that I believe it should be done, which is to generate Bitcoin yield, or worse still, effectively misleading people about what they're actually doing. I think that sucks. Um, so that aside, the overall statement is that the more companies adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet, the better. Now, you're right. there's only one problem of that happening, and that's capital markets, in different parts of the world are different. And if you take the UK, for example, there is, there's a smaller amount of capital, than a lot of people realize in the equity markets, in the smaller cap equity markets as well. So, for example, one of our ambitions is to move to the LSE, at which point we'd probably qualified to be in the FTSE 250. So then, you know, without doing anything else, the capital that you've got available to you is significantly better. I've had some investors say to me that they cannot invest in us. This is institutional investors, because they cannot invest in an Aquis stock. So there's things like that you have to work around, and then you have to work out solutions for those things. Which is all stuff that we're doing. But all you really have to do is you have to just get out there and speak to investors and explain what the model is, what you're trying to achieve, why you think that they should trust you with their capital. And then once you do get trusted with that, you then have to deliver. So, like the competition thing is, on one hand, it's terrible because, if there isn't any competition, then there's no one else going after that same capital as you. And particularly when some of the people do it in sort of quite horrible ways, which, we haven't done ourselves, I'd like to add. But then on the other side of things, if you haven't got that competition, it's not necessarily be a great thing if you're the only company doing something. So I think that's something to be mindful of. But then also with something like Bitcoin, and this is when you then go back into talking about Bitcoin itself rather than Bitcoin Treasury companies. If no one else cares about this particular asset, in our case Bitcoin, then the price is always going to be less than if everyone wants to get involved in it as well. So, the funny thing that we've got is, the competitors that we've got for capital are effectively trying to get the capital and buy the same thing that we're going to buy anyway. So yeah, all I'm trying to do myself is to try and get the right messages out there, so that people understand not just what we're doing, but they understand the sector, and things like the metrics. That's why I talk about the metrics so much. And then I'm just hopeful that, we get some other competition in the UK. I'm looking forward to the day when there's a company out there that's, sort of, saying, right, we're trying to deliver Bitcoin yield as well. This is our number, and then we can spar off each other a little bit. I think that would make my life quite a lot easier, actually. So quite good.
Because I think that when you talk with these seasoned investors on the stock market, you need to explain all these metrics, and they probably say most of them probably they don't even understand Bitcoin. So you need to go from a full course.
Yeah. So I think it was about 2 weeks ago, we were in America. We went to the Bitcoin Unconference. That was great. And then we spent 2 days speaking to investors, which was great as well. And a lot of those investors, most of them are getting, the high level reasons why Bitcoin's so great. Some of those investors are starting to get things like MNAV, but they don't really understand, like, if you've got two companies, both with say like a 1.3 MNAV or something, they can be completely different companies, like the size matters, the yield matters, the trajectory that they're on matters, the management team matters, all these things matter. And so you need to look at all of these metrics. But I suspect that this will be something that will take many, many years for the majority of institutional and retail investors to understand it. And I think what may happen is, so if you look at our company as a good example, we're quite close to the end of our financial year, which is in 3 weeks' time or something, the end of the month. And then a few months later, our statutory results will come out. So obviously, I can't talk about the finer details, but I can talk about what people could work out if they look at the publicly available information. And if you look at the gain on our Bitcoin, the pounds gain, something like £30 million at the moment. So that would be an unrealized profit of £30 million for effectively what's a 6-month period. And when those sorts of figures start to go out to the wider non-Bitcoin focused investment community, they'll see the power of the model, and how unbelievably profitable a business that's run in the right way, that's following a strategy like ours, can be. So yeah, all of this stuff's going to take years. I've signed up to doing this for the rest of my life. um and I think that whilst we've had quite an interesting year so far this year, I think everyone needs to understand that this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon, and like I say, it's a marathon where you also need to sprint every single day.
Yes, that's that's something that we, the Bitcoiners, really understand. But then we need to teach. That's what we are doing. This to teach the no coiners or the investor the difference between the capital markets, the regular capital markets, Bitcoin, and now the Bitcoin Treasury Company. And how was the experience in New York? Because I saw the streaming a few speeches, because was while the time I was sleeping here in Hong Kong. How was the experience? Did you get good connections overall?
Yeah, it was a great conference, actually. So Tim, who organized it, did a fantastic job. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for him. Um, yeah, it was really well done. The production side of things was great as well. So one thing that I thought was really good was the production quality for the people that weren't there. So that, I think at its peak, it was something like 200,000 people were watching it, which is incredible if you think about how many people that is, fifth of a million people. Um, so yeah, it was very good. There was probably, I don't know, 300, 400 people. I don't know the number of people there, and that was a real mixture of some investors, some Bitcoin treasury companies, some people trying to sell things to them. Um, you know, uh, you know, people that produce the podcasts, all different people that really care about this one specific part of Bitcoin. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I managed to spend the whole day there, and I sat through almost every single speech that was done, and almost every single panel that took place. So it was really enjoyable for me to be able to sit there and listen, to all the different people talking about things that are, something that I think about all the time. And for me, the big takeaway from the event was, whilst we've got to quite a good position so far as a business, so early. It really is early. Where we're going to be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's mind blowing, really. So yeah, I absolutely loved the day. It was great. And I was also able to catch up with a number of our early investors who were there, and it's nice to spend a bit of time with them and to hear how supportive they are. They're like me; they're focused on the mission. They've enjoyed seeing the price, creep up, a bit less so it come down, but they've got that same sort of duration that I've got of this is a multi-year thing, in terms of what we're trying to do here.
And what was the experience? Because after the New York conference, you flew to near here to Singapore to the token 2049. For me, was something surprise that people from token 2049 are interested in Bitcoin treasury companies, because I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, so you probably might know what I think from token 2049. but how was the experience to talk to the crypto ecosystem about treasury companies? Were they interested? The questions that they asked were different. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting actually. So, I've done a lot of traveling the last couple of weeks, and I must admit I was quite tired going to Singapore. Um, it's sort of, everyone thinks that it's sort of quite a great life, going to all these different places, but it is quite tiring. Um, so so yeah, I was slightly tired, um, and I enjoyed it in lots of ways, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Hong Kong, for example. Like Hong Kong was probably one of the best conferences that I've been to. It was smaller than, say, the other Bitcoin conference in Vegas earlier in the year. Um, it was bigger than the one that I was talking about in New York. The New York one was an excellent conference. So yeah, it was different in terms of um, the support of Bitcoin. So there's a few things to say there. So most of the people that I speak to or I spoke to at the conference, behind the scenes, the people, that are the sort of the key decision makers in lots of different businesses, they pretty much all come out and they say they're Bitcoin maxis. Um, so you know, I think that's one thing that's worth remembering. The other thing that was fascinating for me was I took part in a couple of panel discussions. Um, and and these companies are only just starting to understand some of the things that we've learned about Bitcoin treasury companies. So in they call them DATs, yeah, digital asset treasuries. So in DATS land, they think that they're just sort of getting to grips with all of these things, but we're two, three, four times ahead of them in our world, Bitcoin treasury land. So that's quite interesting. And I think if you were an experienced investor who understands Bitcoin treasury companies well, I think that, you know, if you like, obviously, I would never invest in these DATs because I don't believe in their asset. I think it's fundamentally flawed in terms of a treasury management approach. But let's say you did believe in their assets. I think you could actually do quite well in that space because you can see a lot of the things that have and haven't happened in Bitcoin treasury land in there. So I think there'll be a lot of learning. It'd be interesting to see whether these companies credit the Bitcoin treasury space with like learning the lessons. I did hear one large Ethereum treasury company talk about something and, in a very positive way. And I was thinking, oh, you definitely don't want to do that. But there is one thing I will say though, um, which which is quite interesting. Not that I want to defend, any other company, but I'll always speak the truth, and whether it's what I believe or not. Um, there is a school of thought on Ethereum that there is a benefit to that, ignoring the fact that I don't believe that it's a treasury asset, of course, but looking past that, because of the way that it's easier to generate that yield on that, and that's not the Bitcoin yield that we talk about, but that's effectively putting your Ethereum at risk. There is a school of thought that is quite a helpful attribute to that asset class in terms of running a public company. So yeah, it was interesting. Um, the takeaway coming away from it is my investment thesis of Bitcoin and nothing else has remained firmly intact. So if anyone was worried that I'm going to get swayed into shit coins, they can put those fears to bed.
Yeah, because I saw some comments on X saying, "How come Andrew is going to this shitcoin conference? What is happening?" But I think that, and sometimes we talk with Diego, my business partner that you met here in Hong Kong as well, that it's good to go to this conference, even though you don't share their ethos. But it's good to learn and to see what is happening and see the ideas and again probably like when you go there, you come with more force, with more strength, believing in Bitcoin. And there are there were many companies that are doing treasuries with other digital assets there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, quite a few, in fact. Yeah, I believe in free speech at the end of the day, and if people have got a different opinion to me, then that's great, as long as they can communicate with respect and without violence. Then that's all good as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I prefer that people say what they believe in. Um, so I went to Token because I wanted to go and put Bitcoin Treasury companies in front of a wider audience, and I wanted to, you know, explain what we're doing at the Smarter Web company, in that context. So it certainly wasn't a wasted trip in that regard. Um, I met some people over there that may be interested in supporting us with some of the things that we do, like Smarter Convert, for example. Um, and so yeah, it was definitely worth doing. But it wasn't. I personally didn't enjoy it as much as some of the other conferences that I've been to recently. But as I said at the start, perhaps that was because I was a little bit tired, perhaps.
Yeah, people think that when you travel a lot is, oh, you are doing an amazing life, and it happened to me around 2017. We were traveling a lot to different digital marketing conference, and I think that in 1 month and a half, I've been to Turkey, to Amsterdam, to Singapore. And when I came back from the last trip, I said, I don't want to travel for at least 2 months or 3 months because I was super tired.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, obviously I've got family as well, and it's hard for them, so but I think other than I've got quite a few days in London coming up over the course of October, but um I've said to them that I'll try and minimize any overseas trips until October's out the way.
Yes, but at the end of the day, it's good to travel because it's different when you go and meet in person and talk to the investors in person or potential investor in person instead of doing a web call or a Zoom or something like that. And you get exposure, you get known from the people. I think that at the end of the day, besides that we have a lot of now technological things, we can do Zoom, we can do whatever like we are doing now. Nothing replaces the person to person meeting is totally different.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. We're lucky to be able to do it like this, but you have to go out and see people.
Excellent, excellent. And talking about, let me ask a couple of questions that the people from the group. But by the way, uh, what do you think about the community? Because the Smarter Web community in in X, the X group is amazing. They are super supportive. They are all day talking about that, talking about the giving information. What do you think about them?
Oh, I'm so proud of our community. We've got the third biggest Bitcoin treasury company community in the world. Only Metaplanet and Strategy has got bigger communities than us. So I'm immensely proud of them. It's 100% genuine, organic. It's not like, we haven't got anyone that works, sort of for the company that's moderating the community or doing anything like that. That would be wrong. So yeah, I'm really proud of them. I check in most days to see what they're doing. Every now and then there's something that's sort of, quite out there that is quite entertaining to see. I don't agree with everything that they say, but that's all good as far as I'm concerned, and I would encourage more things that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, because if someone says to me 10 different things, and then within those 10 things there's one thing that we can sort of take as
Yes,
a company and it benefits us, then that's amazing.
and
So we're really lucky to have such a supportive group of investors, and there's nuggets of stuff in there that when I'm trawling through to see what's going on, that I can sort of take and incorporate into the strategy as well.
yeah, this is the magic of the social media. Like when we post, probably you can, even a person that has 100 followers on X can bring a good idea for the company that you can execute, and is better. And for on my side, I want to say thank you to the people of the community. They are super supportive of my job or what I do, they always tag me. There is a guy that every day at 7 a.m. posts a long post and tags me. So, and when I comment good morning and they say, you are the Hong Kong guy, they know me that I am the Hong Kong guy. So it's funny, even though I'm not an investor because I can, I feel part of the community. So let's move to some questions that the people left there. One of the things that I want to ask before, do you have any plans to get listed in the London Stock Exchange? You are in the process, or you cannot talk about that?
Yeah, so according to the lawyers, I'm not allowed to talk about that. But what they've said I can say is that we've got aspirations of listing on the London Stock Exchange. And I think that's all that I can say on such
Okay.
item.
So, and the questions are these. Scottish Mick says, I just want to thank him personally from us all. We see how hard he works. This is amazing. There is one question from Hal, Jamie Doder, strange the handle, that say, are you concerned the Bitcoin price could rip before getting access to more capital from an LSE listing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what you need to do is you need to think about it differently. So let's say you're an individual and you had £100,000 just in your bank account. Obviously that would be a bit silly anyway because you should have deployed it into. but so you've got £100,000 in pounds. So what are you going to do with that? Well, so you can either deploy it all into Bitcoin or you can average it in to Bitcoin. That's the two things that I would do there. Not financial advice, of course. Now, with a public company, it's different because you almost want a higher and a stronger and a more topical Bitcoin price because it makes the availability of capital easier. So that's kind of the opposite that everyone thinks. Like a lot of people think, well, wouldn't it be great if Bitcoin crashed? Because then you could buy more of it. Well, yeah, you could buy more of it, but probably with less capital. So not really more of it. And I personally believe that Bitcoin's going up forever. And yes, it's going to have the odd dip. But I don't want to see a massive long period of brutal price action because you'll scare a lot of people away from the sector. Like obviously markets, that's the way they work. You'll get good times and bad times and things, but yeah, no, it's the opposite of what you would think. But a slowly increasing Bitcoin price is probably the ideal result. After that, Bitcoin ripping like up significantly, that's probably the next ideal result. And Bitcoin staying flat probably after that, Bitcoin going down after that. So yeah, it's the opposite to what you would think it is.
Yes, so it's better to Bitcoin to go up slowly instead of going flat, because I understand if Bitcoins go down, the investors are not going to put money.
Yeah.
Then if Bitcoin goes up, probably so fast, probably they put money, but you cannot buy so much Bitcoin with this money. But if Bitcoin goes, I don't know, what do you think is going to happen in these upcoming months? Of course, no financial advice with Bitcoin.
Well, I think if you look back at what's happened this year so far, I think Bitcoin has been going up, sort of, dependent on what your view of slow is, slow to medium, let's say, is Bitcoin this year already has been a very respectable return. If it did that forever, that would be okay as far as I'm concerned. Now, what do I think will happen over the next few months? I think it's going to go up a lot more. But that's just my opinion. And I think that'll be fine for the company in terms of what we're doing with everything. I can't control the price of Bitcoin. I can't control when we may be able to list on the LSE. I can't control, I can try and influence the availability of capital, but I can't ultimately make those decisions because I'm not the capital allocators. So I think we just stick to the mission, try and make sure that every aspect of the strategy is as good as it can be. And then ultimately, we're building our business on the very best type of capital in the world. Um, and does it really matter if it's a little bit more, a little bit less when we buy it? We'll look back at this. In 5 years' time, we'll all look back and we'll be a bit like, well, I can't believe that you could have bought Bitcoin for $150,000. Um, look at it like, like people look back like what, 2 years could have bought a load of Bitcoin for $50,000. Uh,
Mhm.
and people forget that. 2 years is nothing. Compare that to any other type of investment that you can have. The returns are unbelievable. So yeah, we'll just stick to the plan, and I think we've got quite a good plan.
Yes, I think that in a couple of years we will say what lucky we were when we were able to buy Bitcoin at 150,000 US dollars. So
Yeah.
that's what is going to happen. So let's move to the other question that the people of the group did. Proof of Power Overtime POW said, can you ask him to go into detail regarding the announcements this morning, specifically over the US race, and if he feels this aligns with his previous no discounts policy?
Yeah, sure. So that was the announcement yesterday morning. The placing for just a little bit below £10 million, £8 million of which was from one investor. Um, so yeah, I don't believe in any way at all that goes against the policy that I've always said, and I probably will always say, of discounts over my dead body. Um, yeah, I think maybe there's a bit of a lack of understanding of different capital market tools, like a warrant, for example, about what they actually are. So the warrants that we've issued to the investors that have put in the capital are effectively worthless until the share price is greater than £1.50, 50% higher than the price that we did the placing at. Um, so I think if you look at any type of capital market thing that you can do, you can do debt, you can do equity, you can do warrants and options. So you can do convertibles, you can do all different things that have got different qualities to them. Um, different structures, obviously. Um, and I think it's a lot better to give that warrant away in exchange for them putting money in than it would be to say to reduce the price and then to do a discount. I don't want to do a discount, so that's why I've always said that I won't do that. But you do have to give people a reason to do something rather than them say, well, actually, I'll do it in 3 months. If because my job is to generate that Bitcoin yield for our shareholders, you see. So I need to find ways of doing that. The risk, if you like, of doing the warrants is that ultimately, if Bitcoin increases by 50% from where it is now, because of the exercise price of the warrant, then that wouldn't be particularly smart, in terms of generating Bitcoin yield, because you're not going to be able to take the capital, deploy it into the asset of your choice, and generate that positive Bitcoin yield with that. So that's the risk of doing that. But there's always a risk with whichever transaction you do. And we've got some other ones sort of that we're thinking about doing, different ones as well, different types of deals to, generate the yield that we tried to do. But yeah, I don't agree at all that the warrants are some sort of a discount. Um, yeah, not at all.
Excellent. And the last question that I have from the community is TDW say, are any of the recent hires Bitcoiners, or is Orange Peeling part of the SmarterWeb employment training program?
Yeah, so it's interesting, really. So if you take like our new non-executive director, for example, Randall, you almost want somebody that isn't a Bitcoiner, because you want somebody that's going to challenge you, that's going to ask all the tough questions that you need to be asked. I think if you look at Albert, our CFO, clearly understands Bitcoin, is excited about the future. That's one of the reasons he chose to join us rather than another company. I think it's quite difficult to find people that have got some of the particular skills that we're after, that understand Bitcoin, and have done what, say, you or I do, which is effectively lived our lives by Bitcoin for quite a long time now. So I think that's quite difficult to do. What's really good for me and really exciting is to see that everyone in the company, without exception, is a lot keener on Bitcoin than before they joined the company. I think that's pretty cool. So I wouldn't ever mandate people that within 3 months they've got to have deployed 50% of their wealth into Bitcoin or anything. But without talking about any one person specifically, I think that people have said to me that, how do I buy this? And I've noticed that with other people that we've been working with in advisors that, have come in it as well. They start to ask more questions because they're more interested. So, that's another thing that is only a positive thing for Bitcoin. And to be fair, for the individuals involved, it's a positive thing for them because they're starting to realize that fiat currency is an utter joke. But no, it's not required. I just want the best people in the world for whatever job it is that we're trying to fill. And then we'll work with that person to, without, radicalizing them, to get them to understand, the benefits, and I've still not met a person, in almost 10 years of being interested in Bitcoin, I've still not met a person who's sort of had a decent amount of exposure to it who hasn't realized that it's got a tremendous place in this earth. So I don't think we actually need to sell it. We just need to make sure that people are getting all of that information constantly, 24/7.
Of course, that's what I do.
Yeah, I know. But it's really important. It's so important, what people like you are doing, and I think what people like us are doing. We're obviously helping effectively the asset that we believe in, but we're helping other people to understand it, in a non-pushy way.
Yes.
I think that's really, really beneficial.
Well, sometimes I can be a little bit toxic, a toxic maximalist, but it is what it is. It is what it is, but sometimes, but yeah, I think that we cannot. But I can imagine going to an interview in SmarterWeb company and say, what do you think about Bitcoin? Just for a random job, like, and you need to understand Bitcoin to work there. But yeah, I think that of course, working for a Bitcoin treasury company, even though you are not interested in Bitcoin or you didn't know Bitcoin before, it push you, or at least make you question what is Bitcoin and go a little bit online to search about that. And talking about the last incorporation, Randall Carl's Kayson, how will his expertise in governance and controls strengthen smarter web Bitcoin treasury strategy?
Well, it'll do it on multiple fronts. So when you're a public company, corporate governance is incredibly important as you become a bigger company. You're never going to get a big institutional investor write you a check for £50 million if you've got any issues on the corporate governance. It's just not going to happen, So he will add a lot of credibility and expertise there. Not that we haven't got everything structured well. It's just it needs to be taken up that level, as you go to be a bigger and a bigger company. And then before he retired and he started to get into to working at just one other non-executive director role, he was an audit partner at PwC. So he obviously is incredibly beneficial to work alongside our existing team, including Albert, and the auditors that we've got as well, because they're external. To make sure that all of that is done properly, and you want people that ask the questions, and then you tell them what it is, and they, in theory, they should be happy with that, and if not, they keep drilling down to the thing. So it'll be tremendously important, because when we first listed, lots of people were asking for, understandably, questions about how we custody our Bitcoin, because we use a couple of the biggest custodians in the world, because we don't believe that self-custodying Bitcoin is acceptable for a public company. And our auditors certainly share that same view. So and but the message, or the takeaway from that time, was that people want to know that that Bitcoin is held in a responsible way and in a right way, and you've got all those processes in place. So someone like that is so valuable for that side of things. And then the other thing that you get with a non-executive director, which maybe not everyone's aware of, is the great thing for me is to have lots of different people now that I can ask questions to if I'm unsure about anything, or if I want another opinion from somebody that hasn't really got a bias. So having those experienced people that have, been through certain things is really valuable, when we're trying to get there, because, I've been very clear that I want us to be, in time, the biggest company in the UK, before that, one of the biggest companies. And, I can't do that by myself without having great people alongside me to do that. So yeah, really pleased that he wanted to join our company.
Excellent. And to start closing the conversation, I want to ask, what are the top priorities for Q4 2025, and of course for the rest of the future, the upcoming years for SmarterWeb company?
Yeah, so without wanting to answer it in a negative way, I've been a little bit disappointed the last 4 to 6 weeks, in the speed of us moving things forward from a new capital point of view. So I'm hoping that a lot of the work that we've put into some of these new conversations and other things will really start to show the rewards of that. That's why I was so pleased yesterday morning to announce that one investor, who put 8 million into the company. So, you get 10 of those, you've got pretty much 100 million, rough, a little bit below 50% of what we've got. It doesn't take a great imagination to see how that can assist us with our Bitcoin yield, that we're obviously very focused on. So yeah, I think that's my main focus. After that, it's just the wider marketing piece and making sure that we're getting out to more legacy media, more podcasts, more conferences, basically everywhere, so that people can understand who the Smarter Web company are, what we're trying to do, and why Bitcoin is a great asset to build a corporate treasury on. So that's something else. And then I've been very clear about my aspirations of being one of the biggest companies in the UK, and we'll have to see when certain things allow me to talk about that more. So yeah, that's probably a good place to leave it.
Amazing. And well, let's see next year in August at Victoria Peak here in Hong Kong, to see how many Bitcoin is Smarter Web company holding. So, and talking about podcasts, you are always welcome to talk here. Just drop me a message and we can talk, and you can announce whatever you want, whatever good news you have from the company. For me, it's a pleasure. And I hope you can travel to that conference in Buenos Aires.
I will certainly do my best, because it sounds like a great event. I was really pleased when they invited me. We just need to make it work. That's one of the things that we're trying to do at the moment. And I think that it'll be a lot of fun for you and I to do one of our live interviews as well. So yeah, I would like to. It is the oldest Bitcoin conference in the world. I think it would be nice to, fly the or to tell the story about the SmarterWeb company there.
Yes, I'm gonna be there because I will be speaking at the La BitConf, the oldest Bitcoin conference that is gonna be held in Buenos Aires. And the good one of the things that I see is that it's a very good. It's very important to bring people from Bitcoin Treasury companies to speak in the LATAM environment, even though in English, because we have zero information. We have zero information. I think that there are only 3 podcasts recorded with Bitcoin Treasury companies. All of that for Alexandre Lyset because he speaks in English. 4 podcasts talking about Bitcoin Treasury companies, 3 with Alexander Lyset, and 1 with Ed Julin, one of the organizers of the conference. So we need more people to talk about that in LATAM because nobody understands about that, and we need to spread the word to force more companies there to adopt a treasury company and get benefits for that strategy. So it's going to be amazing if you can make it to Buenos Aires. I would say that it's not going to be so safe to go walking around recording with the camera, but let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I think the great thing about South America, if you think about it in terms of the size of a market, is it's absolutely massive. Whereas if you take China today as an example, obviously, with what's happened over the last couple of decades and the emerging middle class and the amount of money there is pretty off the charts. Obviously very unfriendly to Bitcoin because of the capital controls that they've got. But there's a real opportunity for the whole world if the wider South America can adopt Bitcoin even more than they've done so already. That could be a pretty incredible catalyst. And obviously away from just the economic side of things, something that would be very very beneficial to all of those people as well. Because obviously you know yourself from growing up there that things like inflation are a real killer. So yeah, it's probably one of those parts of the world, South America, where Bitcoin can do even more good than it's already started to do already. And then the world and Bitcoin can also benefit from all of those people as they benefit from it.
Excellent. So let's see if you can make it. We can meet in Buenos Aires, and I will invite you to my favorite restaurant now in Buenos Aires.
Great.
Amazing. So, Andrew, thank you very much for your time. Anything else you want to add? And of course, how people can contact you.
Yeah, so as always, if anyone's got any questions, feedback or anything, they can just get in touch with me or the company. Always happy to hear things that you think we could do better or that you don't agree with, or, if you just want to say hi, that's cool as well. So yeah, get in touch with anything and, we'll just, stick to the mission.
Excellent. Andrew, thank you very much. And thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, follow us in our all social media, and help us in this titanic mission to orange peel the whole world. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and onboard them to Bitcoin. See you in the next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi. Si te gustó el episodio, danos un like y suscríbete a nuestro canal. Nuestro canal en español es Libertarian BTC ESP. También tenemos un canal en inglés, Libertarian BTC. Nuestro Twitter o X es de Bitcoin, __ o __. Nuestro Instagram es de Bitcoin Libertarian. Nuestro Patreon es de Bitcoin Libertarian. Así que nada, suscríbete, aprende de Bitcoin y apoyanos en esta titánica tarea de darle la píldora naranja a 8 billones de personas. Muchas gracias.